Hi boys and girls, I hope you're having a wonderful Holy Week this week from Palm Sunday leading up to Easter. I have one of my favorite stories that I like to read at Easter time to you guys, so I'm going to read that to you today. The title is The Tale of Three Trees, and you might have heard this story before. It's a pretty popular one. It's a traditional folk tale, all right? And it's retold by Angela Elwell Hunt, and it's illustrated by Tim Jonke. Okay, The Tale of Three Trees. All right, let's take a look. Once upon a mountaintop, three little trees stood and dreamed of what they wanted to become when they grew up. So do you see our three trees standing there on top? And they're dreaming about what they're gonna be when they're big. The first little tree looked up at the stars, twinkling like diamonds above him. I want to hold treasure, he said. I want to be covered with gold and filled with precious stones. I will be the most beautiful treasure chest in the world. So here you can see the tree looking at the stars and dreaming of becoming a treasure chest. The second little tree looked out at the small stream trickling by on its way to the ocean. I want to be a strong sailing ship, he said. I want to travel mighty waters and carry powerful kings. I will be the strongest ship in the world. The third little tree looked down into the valley below where the busy men and busy women worked in a busy town. I don't want to leave this mountaintop at all, he said. I want to grow so tall that when people stop to look at me, they will raise their eyes to heaven and think of God. I want to be the tallest tree in the world. Okay. So those three trees, one wanted to be a treasure chest, one wanted to be the strongest boat, and the other wanted to be the tallest tree that pointed people's eyes towards heaven. Okay. Years passed. The rains came, the sun shone, and the little trees grew tall. One day, three woodcutters climbed the mountain. Okay, so they're climbing up with their axes. The first woodcutter looked at the first tree and said, "This tree is beautiful. It is perfect for me." And with a swoop of his shining axe, the first tree fell. Now I shall be made into a beautiful chest, thought the first tree. I shall hold wonderful treasure. The second woodcutter looked at the second tree and said, "This tree is strong. It is perfect for me." And with a swoop of his shining axe, the second tree fell. Okay, here's some picture. Now I shall sail mighty waters, thought the second tree. I shall be a strong ship fit for kings. The third tree felt her heart sink. When the last woodcutter looked her way, she stood straight and tall and pointed bravely up to heaven. But the woodcutter never even looked up. Any kind of tree will do for me, he muttered. And with a swoop of his shiny axe, the third tree fell. Remember, she wanted to keep growing tall and point to heaven, but now she's been cut down. All right, let's see if their dreams come true. The first tree rejoiced when the woodcutter brought him to a carpenter's shop. But the busy carpenter was not thinking about treasure chests. Instead, his work-worn hands fashioned the tree into a feed box for animals. The once beautiful tree was not covered with gold or filled with treasure. He was coated with sawdust and filled with hay for hungry feed animals. So he was a box of hay. You might be noticing something. The second tree smiled when the woodcutter took him to a shipyard. But no mighty sailing ships were being made that day. Instead, the one strong tree was hammered and sawed into a simple fishing boat. Too small and too weak to sail an ocean or even a river. He was taken to a little lake. Every day he brought in loads of dead, smelly fish. Do the first two trees think that their dream is going to come true? No. The first one dreamed it was going to be a treasure chest full of precious items, and it's been made into a hay box to feed animals. The second tree wanted to be a mighty ship for a king that could sail great seas. Instead of it's a small fishing boat. Let's see what happens. The third tree was confused when the woodcutter cut her into strong beams and just left her in a pile in the lumber yard. What happened? The once tall tree wondered. All I ever wanted to do was stay on the mountaintop and point to God. So now she's just beams of wood sitting in a pile in the lumber yard. How do you think all the trees are feeling right now? Yeah, kind of sad, disappointed maybe that their dreams haven't come true like they thought they would. Okay. All right, so this kind of gives us a clue right now. Is our story fiction or nonfiction? Yeah, our story is fiction because do trees really have thoughts and dreams and hopes? Do they get sad and disappointed? No, but this is a fun story to help us learn. A folk tale helps us learn a lesson. Let's keep going. Many, many days and nights passed. The three trees nearly forgot their dreams. But one night, golden starlight poured over the first tree as a young woman placed her newborn baby in the feed box. I wish I could make a cradle for him, her husband whispered. The mother squeezed his hand and smiled as the starlight shone on the smooth and sturdy wood. This manger is beautiful, she said. And suddenly, that first little tree knew he was holding the greatest treasure in the world. What was he holding? Yeah, he was holding baby Jesus. That's a pretty great treasure. That's better than what he had even imagined. One evening, a tired traveler and his friends crowded into an old fishing boat. The traveler fell asleep as the second tree quietly sailed out onto the lake. Soon a thundering crash and a storm arose. The little tree shuddered. He knew he did not have the strength to carry so many passengers safely through the wind and the rain. Do you see it? The tired man awakened. He stood up, stretched out his hand, and said, "Peace." The storm stopped as quickly as it had begun. And suddenly, the second tree knew he was carrying a king. He was carrying the King of heaven and earth. Remember the story of Jesus calming the waters? One Friday morning, the third tree was startled when her beams were yanked from the forgotten woodpile. She flinched as she was carried through an angry, jeering crowd. She shuddered when the soldiers nailed a man's hands to her. She felt ugly and harsh and cruel. Look what she had become. Who is that? Let me give you a closer look. But on Sunday morning, when the sun arose and the earth trembled with joy beneath her, the third tree knew that God's love had changed everything. It had made the first tree beautiful, a treasure chest holding the baby Jesus. It had made the second tree strong to hold Jesus and the disciples. And every time people thought of the third tree or saw one that represented him, they would definitely think of God and their eyes would point to heaven. Okay, you see the three trees now? That was better than being the tallest tree in the world. So boys and girls, what this story kind of helps us learn is these three trees, they each had a dream for themselves, right? They had these big, great dreams. And then as life went on, their dreams weren't happening like they wanted, right? They didn't get made into a treasure chest or a king's boat, and they didn't get to stay planted to point as a tall tree to heaven. But God had a plan for them, just like he has plans for you. And his plan for them was even better than their dreams, right? Not only did this tree get to hold great treasure, but it got to hold the greatest treasure in the world. And not only did this tree get to be made into a boat to carry a king, it got to carry the King of Kings. And this tree, it most certainly grew up to point people to heaven in more ways than he could ever have dreamed or imagined. And so what we should remember and learn from this book is that while we have dreams and ideas, God's plans and his ideas and dreams for us are even bigger. All right? And so sometimes we just have to wait, like they waited a long time, and trust that God has great plans for us. I know that he has great plans for you. Have a wonderful Easter, boys and girls. Bye.